My story about warning signs comes from when I was a 10-year-old altar boy at St. Anne's Roman Catholic Church in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And, the story of being an altar boy should be totally wholesome and happy. And if none of you have any trepidation about what my warning sign might be about, don't worry. Or if you do have that trepidation, don't worry. This isn't one of those stories. This is a pretty innocent story about being an altar boy, but it involves warning signs that were very serious to me at the time. That year we had a new priest. His name was Father Charnoki. And we had learned as altar boys that he was what we called a stickler. He wanted every rule followed very carefully. He required us to always be on time, to wear our altar boy outfits perfectly as he saw it. And he checked everything. It was like in a military inspection when he came in before Mass to check on your altar boy outfit. And he also gave you very clear instructions about what he wanted done that day at each Mass, who was going to do which chore, who was going to swing the incense, who was going to light the candles, all of those, ring the bell, all those things. And he was very insistent on things being done correctly. So I was the youngest altar boy at 10 years old, and as such, I was a little intimidated by Father Charnoki. So when he ordered all of us to show up at 7:30 a.m. on Good Friday, he ordered all 12 altar boys to come and be there for the entire day on Good Friday. And as some of you who may have attended the Catholic Church know, there are several services on Good Friday. There was an 8 o'clock in the morning service. There was a noon service. There was a 3 o'clock in the afternoon service. And there was Stations of the Cross at 7:30 at night. He expected all of us to stay all day and be at every one of those services and be ready to do whatever he had directed us to do. So we all showed up dutifully, and we were lined up had put our outfits on, and we were ready for him. He came in for the inspection, and he told us very explicitly what he wanted us to do at each one of the services, and he assigned each of us different duties for each service. And we were supposed to keep that in mind and do strictly what he had told us to do. The other thing he told us was that he expected us to adhere strictly to the rules of fasting and abstinence. So he did not want any food in the building or in the room that day. If you brought any food with you, give it to me now. I'll put it in the parish house and you can pick it up later, but no food today, water only. After the 7:30 service tonight, you can go home and eat, but we're going to do the full fasting and abstinence while you're here. So we were all pretty much taken aback by that, because Father Murphy, who had come before Father Charnoki, used to have donuts and treats, and it was kind of a party atmosphere behind the scenes, but Father Charnoki wasn't having any of that. So we sat there in kind of stunned silence after he left the room, and we went through the first service, and the 8 o'clock service, and we were done with that. And we came back to the elder boys' room, and everybody started talking about, well, no, it's only 9 o'clock, and we don't have another service until noon, and he expects us to sit here, and he didn't want us, no comic books, no newspapers, no reading materials other than we could feel free to read the Bible or the Baltimore Catechism while we were waiting for the next service. But other than that, it was shut down. So we sat there, and as we talked about it, some of the older altar boys who were a little more daring and more rebellious, they started getting upset about these new rules and this new priest, and they said, we're not sitting for this. I'm not sitting here for 2 hours doing nothing and not able to eat anything. I'm hungry. We got to do something about this. So one of the older altar boys, his name was Randy, I remember, came up with the idea, if we all pooled our pocket change that we have with us today, we could put together enough money that one of us could run up to the 5 and 10, the G.C. Murphy 5 and 10 store, and they've got penny candy there. and we could buy a bunch of penny candy and bring it back and eat it. Father Charnoky's off praying somewhere. He's not going to see it, and we'll get away with this, and we'll have a good time, and we won't get caught. That was the idea. So they picked, of course, me, the youngest altar boy, to go do this. They dumped all the change out. I had about $2.80. I ran up to G.C. Murphy's, scared to death that Father Charnoky was going to catch me. He didn't. I bought all this candy, Fireballs, taffy, gum, everything I could find that would fit within my budget there. Brought back this big white paper bag of candy and put that on the table, and we all divvied it up and had whatever we wanted. So everybody was happy. We pulled it off. Nobody's going to be the wiser. We went to Mass, and I was assigned the duty at that Mass of being the one who held the paten. And for those of you that may not know, the paten is the gold plate or brass plate that's on a handle, and you hold it under somebody's chin when they're getting communion, so that if the communion host falls, a wafer falls, it doesn't hit the ground. You catch it on the paten. That hardly ever happened. I don't remember it ever happening, actually. So I'm going to get off here really quickly, but since I'm not getting scored anyway, I really don't care. I'm going to finish the story. I got to get to the end of this story because it's a pretty good warning sign. I was getting the paten ready, and the other altar boys were doing their things, and then when Father Charnoky turned to the communion rail to actually start passing out the communion wafers, he wanted the other altar boys to be all kneeling at a rail and to be the first ones in the congregation to get communion and do that before the rest of the congregation came up. So they all got in line and kneeling at the communion rail. And Father Charnoky leads me, and I'm with the paten going over there, and I'm going to put my paten under this guy, Randy, whose idea the whole thing was, under his chin to start with. He opens up his mouth, puts out his tongue, and his tongue is bright green from the mint taffy that had been among the penny candy I bought. And I saw that, and that was a warning sign to me that we were all in big trouble, because there was no way Father Charnoky was not going to understand what the source of all these colored tongues, because I was seeing atomic fireball tongues coming out, bright red tongues, a couple blue tongues, and the distinctive green that Randy and some of the other altar boys had. So Father Charnoky did a visible double take when he saw these tongues, but he went ahead and gave them communion, and he finished with the congregation's communion, and he was supposed to give me communion last. And as the person holding the paten, I was just supposed to hold it under my own chin. And when he did that, when he turned to me with it, he kind of gave me a hard look, like, okay, open your mouth. And I just went, I closed my mouth and shook my head, which in Catholic tradition means I'm in a state of mortal sin and I'm not prepared to receive communion. And I figured at that point it was better to be in mortal sin and on my way to hell than to open my mouth and let him see whatever color my tongue had turned from all the penny candy. So those were the warning signs.